Alrighty. Hey everyone, welcome again to our Amazon weekly class. And tonight's going to be great because we have my friend here, Tony. So if you guys don't know Tony, Tony has sold $6.5 million worth of products on Amazon. So you guys already know the deal. This guy is a heavy hitter. He's been on Amazon for about 10 years. So again, he's a heavy hitter with, with experience in sales. And also Tony's a very good human being. So right, Tony?
Yeah,
Very
thank you, my
humble,
man.
very
That's a great
humble,
intro.
very detailed person. And today he's gonna share his screen and just drop value on us. He doesn't need to do this. He doesn't get paid to do this. So appreciate you, Tony, for being here tonight.
Yeah, for sure, my man. Thank you for the intro. I'm gonna need screen share, by the way.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I gotta give you guys some context on my background, just so you guys know like where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Okay,
Go
cool.
ahead.
I'm gonna share my screen. So I've been selling since 2014. This is like my lifetime breakdown. 6.5 million in lifetime sales. I do everything 100% OA, 100% FBA, 100% prep center. This is the trailing 1 year from like today back 365 days. So like good times, man. I move product. I love doing prep center because like I don't have to touch anything and I want to be fully remote. Um, I'm going to show you guys my setup, like a little peek in my business, like under the hood. I do what's called web scraping. And if you guys are familiar with tactical arbitrage, it's functionally the same thing. And basically I'm able to create leads lists. Like I can do that. And it's really advantageous for me because whatever tactical arbitrage doesn't have set up, I have it set up and like other people can't come in and compete against me as a result. But we're going to get into this. And like the theme of tonight's topic is going to be qualifying leads into purchases. And it's kind of like what I wish I would have had like when I first started out, because there was a lot of pain points that newer sellers have. This is going to be my speaker notes. And if you guys want them at the end, you're more than welcome to have them. But for me, like what I want to impart on you guys is how to avoid like common traps like price tanking, poor velocity, and buying too much supply. Because I've made all three of these mistakes in the past. And like I bought 6 months of supply on something thought I was buying 1 month of supply. And so I end up having like 30 different data points that I check or run through, and we're going to cover them on today's call because a lot of the times one metric might not work. So we have either 1 to 3 extra metrics that we can lean on to confirm our suspicion. Because I think Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. And so it's always kind of like you have a suspicion of what's going on, and you want to confirm it. And if I see it validated across multiple data points, I'll feel a lot more comfortable making the purchase decision because I know that I'm not guessing that it's selling. I know that it's selling. And I want to see that it's selling, and I want to see how much it's selling for. And so these are all the things that I use when I'm reviewing data. And then the reason we do this all is because I'm kind of a defensive buyer by nature, because I'm hyper concerned about guarding my downside and stacking my upside. Meaning like I'm making a trade-off in that I'm more concerned about multiplying my failure, but in doing so, by buying shallow, and sometimes I'm giving up multiplying my success. And like it cuts both ways, but there's times when you know to be aggressive and when you know like to ease off. And more or less like when the setup's bad, I know that the setup can turn against me, but I know that going in so that if it does happen, I'm kind of like divorced of the emotion when it does play that out because I know it from the onset. That being said, like once we do all this, we can determine our purchase depth. As far as groundwork's concerned, my first step whenever I'm reviewing something is verifying that I'm ungated, because you don't want to go through any of the review process and you end up being gated. And then you're just like, well, crap, I wasted all that time doing the review process. Since I do everything OA, I always need to verify or do like a spot check to make sure that there's a photo match. It's the same quantity, same model number. I usually don't deal with bundles. I'm more so in shoes, and that's what we're going to cover today. And the reason we want to do that is because like we don't even want to invite the risk of danger from Amazon in the form of a complaint from the customer, or that can translate to inauthentic complaint or return rates and stuff. You could do that, but for me, I'm just so hyper fixated on preserving my account health that my livelihood depends on this. So I'm not going to even invite the possibility of something going wrong. If it's supposed to be like purple and it's like a bluish hue, like I'm not going to even try. That being said, since I'm doing OA, I'm kind of optimized for that. And to do that, we need to manufacture margin. And for me, I transitioned, I think probably like 2022 to full OA, something like that. But the biggest thing that you can take advantage of is eliminating that sales tax. And one of the two ways you can do that is having your resale certificate. I know Walmart and Best Buy, you can sign up for it and you'll be 0% sales tax. And the reason for that, I'll go with in a little bit, but like that's an extra 10% of margin on your purchases. And that can make or break the difference between something being kind of good to something really good, where you're like, if it's on the fence, it's enough to push it over. And so if we stack more things on top of that, like cashback, gift cards, and coupons, what it's functionally doing in essence is like, imagine you review 100 items just straight with no like fancy discounting. Maybe only like 10 to 20 of them work. But once you start stacking all these discounts on them, now all of a sudden like 30 to 40 of them are candidates now. And you want to be in the position to have the greatest selection to choose from as a result, because then you can take the best setups. You're just kind of fighting against, you're doing like an uphill battle when you have less choices, because the last thing you want to do is force purchases that are bad. Because one of the issues is when you're like sourcing is you might only find like 5 items, and like if that's all you found, then you're just like, well, crap, you don't want to waste a day. And that's not the position you want to be in when you do this. And I was supposed to open an attachment. Manufacturer margin. Luis has probably gone over this. This is more like kind of like a bullet point list. What I wanted to show you guys, like this is kind of like the 11 different ways you can manufacture a margin that you should be aware of, and kind of the ranges in terms of impact that they can have. I'm basically always doing 1 through 5. Eliminate sales tax, gift cards, credit cards, cashback websites, and coupons. Sales are kind of like manufacturing margin, but they're not, because like they go away and they're not necessarily on demand. You get sign up discounts. Asking for a discount, I did that at Walmart buying a pallet of cheese balls. I asked for a 10% discount because I stocked it out, and they gave it to me. And I thought super conglomerate Walmart would never give me a discount, but they gave me a discount. It was nuts. But like this is just like for a handy dandy reference. But I wanted to drive home this point for you guys and show you like no bells and whistles, 10% sales tax, $100 item, just to make the math easy. You're paying $110 out of pocket. And so someone that knows how to manufacture margin, you're going to eliminate the sales tax. Like with Nike.com, which we're going to go over today, you can use a gift card for 5% off. And that's something that I would factor into my cost of goods. And then you go into your credit card and your cash back. I don't factor these into the cost of goods because as I understand it, the cash back anyway is considered a rebate, therefore it's not taxable. The other issue with cash back is that since it's functionally out of your control, the problem becomes if it doesn't issue. And if your decision was dependent on that, and it doesn't issue, then it puts you in like a weaker position. But I like to include it as part of my decision-making process because it technically exists. And so I like to think of it more so as like your theoretical cost of goods sold, because if you include it and you do capture it, it's going to lower your effective costs, which is why I put effective costs here. And so the reason it's important on that same item, what ends up happening is your break even, I call it the limbo price. Like how low can you go before you sell at like break even? And so someone that's not manufacturing margin has got to cut loose at 137 versus us doing all this belt and whistle stuff. We can sink as low as 106. And so our $27 cost difference is going to translate to a $31 margin difference between our break even points. And the reason we want to do all of that as part of our buying process is because if it turns against us, we can withstand all those price fluctuations. Because functionally for me, I'm always looking at 30% ROI as my floor. And so like realistically, what has to happen, the item has to lose 30% of its ROI, and I'm only then beginning to approach a loss. And then it has to continue to degrade that much further for me to eat a loss. And so you're looking at functionally like a catastrophic event to the ASIN for you to result in a loss of like 10 or 20%. Like you're losing 50% of ROI. And so part of the decision-making process for me is looking at price stability, because you're trying to set it up in such a way that it has to fight against its historical average and it has to chew through all that margin. And so it turns into like a situation of what's the probability of that happening? And so like for me, oh yeah, questions maybe? Okay, we're good. I talk really fast. Sorry, guys.
I don't think so. No, you're good.
Okay.
Good, bro.
So like one of the things I wanted to bring up to you guys was like what happens after a sale, because one of the issues that people have is like, oh, it's price tanking. And I came up with this thing that I thought was really clever. Like profit has to pierce through these layers, and this is like what goes first. For me, I always think that sale difference is what goes first in terms of margin. That's what evaporates first. And this is like, say it's cost $50, it goes on sale, now it's $30. That $20 of extra margin, that's going to be the first thing to evaporate on the listings. And you'll see that play out anywhere from like 1 to 3 weeks after the sales occurred, after all that inventory is coming into the listing. After that, the sales tax people are going to be like the first ones to fall. Like the 10% people are going to break even before the 0% people. And so like if you stack that gift card, credit card, and that cash back on top of you, you can go that much lower than everyone else because you kind of want to be like, obviously you never want to lose, but like if you're going to lose, you want the loss to be so shallow that like it's okay. For me, I'd rather lose the money and not the time. Wait, I forget the scene. I'd rather lose the time and not the money, meaning I'm okay breaking even. If I need to cut loose and leave, I'll get the money back and I'll redeploy it elsewhere. But in terms of price tanking, like how do you deal with it? I don't do any FBM, but the people that do, you want to be the first one in, meaning when that $30 sale price comes up, when the market's used to it being 50 cost, you want to be the first one in before the markets have an opportunity to react to that $20 sale difference. And so if you can list it on day one of the sale, you can potentially capture that price difference and you'll have like a really explosive margin. Your competitive advantage here is going to be speed. You got to be paying attention and execute as quickly as you can because that window is going to continue to close as the FBA people come in and other people will find it over time. Your other thing you can do, and my friend said this best, is you want to be the last one out. And this is good for me since I do FBA. If you can be that last person standing with $30 cost while the market resets at $50 cost, well, you now have an extra $20 of margin to like profit off of, right? The problem you're up against though is that you don't know how long that's going to take. And that can impact you from a compounding perspective. And if you're carrying the finance, you might need interest. And obviously you're not going to get any cash flow in that time frame, which kind of sucks. And that's kind of one of the problems with like buying and holding. Like it's great when it sells, but like what do you do between like month 0 and 6? Like ain't nothing happening. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but just something to be aware of. And so one of the things I started going or gravitating towards is letting velocity work through low price sellers. And you'll see this a lot with shoes. And the reason you like velocity is like if people are buying shallow and it's selling 50 a month and they only have one stock, like in my mind, I'm trying to mentally calculate like, okay, like how long should it take to go through 20 inventory selling 50 a month? Like I'll have to wait half a month, assuming like no more additional inventory comes into listing. So knowing that in mind, like I can wait it out, so to speak. And I'm trying to like gauge, like, do I have to wait a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? And once I have that information, I can make the judgment, like the call at that point. But basically the other thing too is that the fact that I think of it like a price dam. And I had an example here. And a link that I want to show you guys. And I was supposed to show you guys later, but I'll show it now. This one, this was on sale from Nike.com, right? And so you can literally see like the sale must have occurred around here. You're seeing the offer count coming in. And usually what happens in this instance, like too much supply is coming in and not enough demand to strip it out and stock them out. And so what I meant by price dam, I wonder if I bought this. I bought this kind of recently. Cool. Seller Amp will show you this, like the quantity levels and stuff. And so kind of like what I'm getting at is like this guy's got 20 at 31. And a better example would have been like if these guys weren't here. But the idea would be like if this guy's holding the price at 31 and then there's a jump up to like 35, like I would price at 35 is kind of what I'm getting at. But like all these guys will get stripped out if this listing's selling like 100 a month, 200, 300 a month. Like that's what I'm trying to mentally calculate. So for decision-making flow, like I'm verifying the items in stock, I'm ungated, it's the same item. And then these are going to be actual data points we're going to start looking at. I want to look for price stability. If it doesn't pass that, I'm not checking for velocity. Next thing I check is velocity. And if those two are in place, then I need to make the decision, how much purchase do I want to go on it? And it's kind of just like if it fails at any of the steps, you don't go to the next one. Because you're doing this so many times that you want to save time. Like I'm looking for reasons not to buy stuff all the time. And so how do we check for price stability? For me, the big thing is the 30 and 90-day buy box. Sales will happen like periodically, but I have a theory, a working theory. I think in stock trading it's called mean reversion. And all it really means is that historically, I like to see the ASINs revert back to its historical average because I want to play to averages. Since I'm dealing with FBA and my lead time is like 3 to 5 weeks, the market I'm reviewing it, like I'm reviewing it in day 1, the market I'm going to land in like day 30 isn't going to be the same thing. So I need to play to historical averages to know that I'm going to come out ahead because I'm thinking of everything in terms of probability, like it's going to play in my favor. There are things you can be aggressive with, but like just know that it can work in either direction going in. And that's okay. For me, I don't like doing that, but like I know that that's a strategy that exists. And so for me, I'm always looking at like, will I survive if the price goes back to average? Because the other issue is if you see historically that there's a low price on the listing, that means repricer settings were active. And the concern is if Amazon finds your inventory for another seller and adds it back to inventory, the repricer kicks back in, and then a second seller will match it and it'll bring the price back down. And so I just want to be aware of that, and I need to know that I can survive at that price point if I need to exit at that price point. Not that I want to, because I can wait, but like I'm always mindful of that. And so like I wanted to give you an example of this with the leads list, because I have that as a data point. And this is going to be like one of your common traps. And that shouldn't, oh, you know what? That's killing. Okay, lowest 30. Oh, these are some high price shoes, like 150 bucks. So what we want is like this. These are bad setups. For me, like these are bait. These are set up to fail. Because today they might be set, like the listing price might be like 200 bucks, 104, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's selling at 104. Like I'm going to make the decision, like, what if it goes back to 52? And these might be selling for that much because they're $70 priced. And so that makes sense. Like 100. This guy's 113. Let me see if I can get you guys a good example. Because what can happen is like it can stock out and people will list it for like an obscene amount. Like here, 178. But realistically, knowing my luck, it's going to come back down to 97. And so when I make my purchase decision, I need to know that I'm going to survive at 99 if I need to exit. And so for me, I'm framing this as like a $20 loss as my worst case scenario versus a 178 as my upside. The upside is phenomenal at 46 profit and 47 ROI. That's if it's selling though. And so we have a way to check that it's selling too. But for me, it's like, do I want to risk $23 loss for a $46 upside? If it was like a $5 to $10 loss with a $50 upside, you know what? If I'm feeling spicy, I would try that. But for me, like it's too lopsided that I'm worried that that's going to occur again. Because the other concern is that, and I'm getting ahead of myself here. Yeah, I want to get ahead. Okay, 3-month 4 place. Well, I've gone over this a few times. So, because the other concern too that I'll look at is the 1-year history. And I'm kind of like, this event happened so long ago in December of last year that it's likely not going to affect us or reoccur again in the future because we're so far away from that event. But in the back of my mind, I'm aware that somewhere in the marketplace that I'm not aware of allowed for this item to sell at a $90 price point for a consistent period of time. And so in the back of my mind, I'm worried that that event might occur again in the future. And so I like to look at as far as 1 year back just to know like, ooh, like it has the possibility of going down that far. Not that I'm expecting it to. I just need to know that like someone somewhere out there like was able to make it viable at that price point because I'm assuming people aren't selling at a loss intentionally. So that's got to be break even or better, which tells me that this might have existed somewhere for like 60 bucks somewhere to allow for that. But for like this, like seeing this happen again, I worry that this person still has access to this price point and they might come in again with more quantity. So like I'm mentally preparing myself to know that like if that's what plays out and it sustains, then that's going to put me in a disadvantage. Yeah, right. A position of disadvantage because like I'm not going to survive that. And so for me, like those are common setups that I worry that people are taking because I see it priced really high, but like that might not be the case. It might not even be selling. Like what good does it do me if it's at 104, but it regularly sells at 54? Like this is a better example of what I'm trying to drive home. Like for me, like I need to know I survived 57 because that's where it likes to rest at. And that's where it gravitates towards. And it only probably went up this high because the result of it being stocked out. You have to have market knowledge and be aware that we're going into Q4 and this is a sweater. Sweaters do better during winter time. And that's going to impact your decision. But like the cost is 53.20, I think, after all the discounts and stuff. 54. Like I'm going to go smush. Like I don't want to lose. Like I've lost too many times. Like I'm not going to do it. if you see sales triggering at this price point, like you can try it and swing it. Just know that like from a historical average, if I were to be a betting man, this listing wants to go back to 57 in my mind. And like, if I can't survive at 57, I don't want to even try it because my downside's too like lopsided. Like I don't want it to be like I don't want it to be $20 profit, $20 loss. Like that's too lopsided. If it was like a $4 loss, $20 upside, I might try it because it's so lopsided in my favor, not against me. I think we covered this. 3-month floor price. For me, like I'm looking for like the duration of the floor price. Like if this was only $70 for a little bit of time and the rest of the time it's like at 104, like I would functionally ignore the $70 because like it's a blip on the radar. But because the floor price here is like 54 for so long in this, oh yeah, 3-month period. Like for me, like it was at that price for the last 40 to 50% of that 3-month time frame. And like for me, from a probability standpoint, that's likely to play out again. And like I'm not going to take it. And so I shouldn't show you only like the bad sides, I should show you the good sides too. Let me show you buy box. And these are my personal spreadsheets, and this is how I source. Let's see if we can do it on this number sold with 50. Oh my goodness. Like this should have high price stability. Oh my goodness, is this eligible for the coupon code? I gotta double check that. 8740. For me, like, yes, the price point went down as low as 115. I'm willing to acknowledge that, but I'm seeing this like 125 price point more as like the baseline. And so like $10 downside is kind of sucky for shoes because every return on a shoe functionally ends up being like $14 in fees that like you don't get back. Like returns cost you money. Like if you make $10 and it refunds, you lose the $10 and you lose an additional $14. So from a shoe selling perspective, like that is not enough margin to withstand the historical return rate of shoes, which is around 12 to 15%. The upside's too low, 26 ROI. The dollar profit's good, but like the ROI is wrong. And I'm getting ahead of myself because for me with shoes, like you need both the minimum profit and the minimum ROI. For me, I do 1230 because I think it sounds cool, like a clock, the time. I do $12 profit, 30% ROI. That's my minimum. Because the hope for that, without getting into the math, is that one profitable sale will cancel out one return. You're going to be in a much worse position if that return is unsellable, meaning like you lose the full cost of the $50 shoe. In the past, I was buying things like $4 profit, and what ended up happening is it would take like 4 sales to cancel out one refund. And then on sale 5, I'd just get another refund. So like if you're not paying attention to your refund rates, you'd literally be in a better position to sit in cash. You would make more money doing nothing than you would be selling something that's like $6 profit, like 10% ROI on a shoe. Oh yeah, I'm talking too much. Everyone's doing good.
Do we take questions, bro?
Oh, we're getting questions?
Does
Hopefully it's
anyone have
making
a
sense to you.
question?
Are you good?
Anyone?
All right, we're good. We're good. If it comes up, we're good. And a link. So one of the things like we want to look at is offer count trend. Basically, if it's going up, like anticipate danger. If it's going down, anticipate the price going up. If it's remaining flat, the hope is like it's going to continue going flat. This is a good example because the offer count's going up, right? And I think we already covered this to a degree, but what I wanted to bring up was the fact that you see the offer count going up. And the problem is we don't know where we are within this process. If it's marching, like we don't know if half of the sellers are entered the listing. Like we don't know if the offer count is going to end at 80, 100, 120. We don't know where we are in that process. We do know, or that we can already see that too much supply is putting downward pressure on the price. And so like if we're reviewing it right here, and that's what we see, like don't even take it because like it's still playing out. Looking at a year, you can kind of see that this went on sale around March time, and you can see that offer count go up. And so what happens is you can see the price collapse along with it. But what I want to bring up is that this is the power of being able to wait. And that's one of the competitive advantages that you can wield is just time. If you can wait, it takes like 2 months for everyone to stock out, and you'll notice that like the price recovers and goes back up. The problem though is like in this context, it's selling say at 30, but you might wait like 2-3 months for it to sell at $34. Like you're waiting that long for $4 extra profit. For me, that doesn't make sense. If the profit were to jump up by a factor of like 10 to 15 bucks, like I'd be willing to wait like that time frame. But if your best upside is only like $4, I'm just gonna get the money out and try and park it into something that is compounding, that's selling now at a rate that like makes sense. But that's gonna be like on a case by case basis, and like only you are gonna know that what makes sense. Buy box is higher than new offer price. Like for my floors, let's see if I can find it on this one. And I think I did see it on this one. So you can click and drag to zoom in on this. But kind of what I wanted to impart was that the offer price is $30 right here. You'll notice a little triangle. But what I'm getting at is the buy box will buy box up here at 33. So I'm willing to ignore this line down here at 30 because the buy box is happening at 33. Like if this was stable, like across a larger time frame, I'd consider 33 the floor price, not that $30 new offer price, because it's buy box and above it. And so sometimes that extra $3 can make or break that difference between it being like on the fence to like, okay, I'm willing to try it. Overall trend, I think we covered that. Flatter's better. We don't want to ride waves. 1 year history, that was me saying I was getting ahead of myself. Duration history. For me, like on Keepa, it'll tell you like how old the ASIN is. This is like 2,000 days old. For me, I try and only buy things that are aged 3 months or older. And the reason for that is like my defensive nature. I say I don't want to trailblaze because the problem is I always like to look back at established history. And I think that like the worry is something that's new hasn't found its price equilibrium. It doesn't know where it likes to rest. And if we don't have a way to reference that, like we basically don't want to be on that ride of finding out. I would rather have other people figure it out. It can be absolutely profitable and like advantageous to be in it, but like there's no way to know. And that I think that's the cost of admission of being on the ASIN. You can kind of predict that it'll do well, like say something like Starbucks pumpkin spice latte stuff coming onto the market during fall season, like that has pent up demand behind it and like it's probably going to do well. Like when PlayStation 5s came out, like those are going to have a markup because like there's demand behind them. But in general, like other things that are just kind of like I don't know, like a new marker with like a weird color, like it can play against you and there's no way to know. And for me, like I'm not going to take that setup. So for me, like I want anything 3 months or older in age because I want to be able to point on the graph like it likes to rest at like say 20 bucks or whatever the number is. For me, more history, the better. Ways to check for velocity. Number bought is like the best way to answer if it's selling or not. And I have this data point that I pull from Keepa and I include it because that's half the battle is like, we don't want to buy anything that's not selling. And so usually it shows up right here and it's not showing up. I wonder if it's because I'm on my Prime, like my seller account. But usually there's a little tag up here to say like number bought. If not, we're gonna have to do it through here. You see this yellow line, it says number sold 50, 100. And I have a handout for this too. The other way it'll show, there's 3 places you can see it. It'll show up there on the graph. It'll show up right here, bought in past month. That's the second place. The third place is right here, and I'm not sure why it's not displaying right here. But that at least answers the question that there's velocity behind the item, meaning it's selling 100 per month. That data point is coming directly from Amazon, and it's absolutely fantastic, and I love it because you don't have to vet it different ways. In a perfect world, you would only ever buy things that have that metric or higher because the way you get like crazy velocity on your accounts and hitting like 1 million in sales or more, you're selling things that sell like 100, 200, 300 or more a month. I think one of my most aggressive listings, like the ASIN itself, I think sells like 3,000 a month. Like I don't get all those sales, but like the ASIN itself, like 3,000 purchases are occurring. So when you're on listings like that, like it's not scary to buy 300, 500 of an item because it's selling 3,000 a month. So it's not scary. Like it's going to sell through. And when you start having hard data behind you, meaning like your own sales, like you have that much more conviction behind the purchase because you see it. Like if it's selling 1 a day every day consistently, like it's going to sell 30 a month. Like you're not guessing anymore. It's going to sell. And so if you need to buy 3 months of supply, like you have that confidence to know you'll be able to sell through it. And it leaves you in a position to kind of like project into the future where like you're going to land. And so that'll help you budget, and like it's gonna let you compound better and stuff. In general, for me, the buy box is gonna be suppressed, right? I personally, in a perfect world, I would only buy, I have the column here. I would only ever buy ASINs that have the buy box on it. And this one doesn't have it on it for some reason. It's just gone off. Because for me, what ends up happening is from the repricer standpoint, you can price above the buy box and squeeze out an extra few dollars of margin. And for me, it's like less friction on the sales. Both like buy box and suppress can sell equally as well. But the issue with suppress is on the repricer front, usually people are competing on lowest price. And that's, you don't get that advantage of like pricing above it. I think the rotation is better with buy box and stuff. It's going to be kind of a matter of preference, but both work equally as well. Sales rank. Sales rank is going to be your other indication of velocity. Like 1 is the best sales rank possible. The further you get away from 1, like the slower it sells. You can have unlisted or no sales rank stuff. Those can still sell, but we have to check velocity a different way for that. And your indicator when you don't have that number bought is kind of like, you can see the sales rank here in green. Like the fact that it's staying within like that 30 to 40,000 range tells me it's at least sustaining its sales rank. If it was going up towards like 100,000, that tells me it's slowing down. If it's going closer to 1, that tells me it's picking up. So like you can infer that like the velocity from the sales rank alone is one of your data points. The offer count too will give you a good indication. Like this is healthy. Like you see sellers entering and exiting the listing, right? Offer count 23, 18 here. So it's good to see like an ebb and flow in and out. But the problem with this is that the offer count will only go up or down when they enter or exit the listing. Meaning they have to come onto the listing with at least one quantity for the offer count to go up. Or they have to go from 1 quantity to 0 quantity, and then they'll go away and people will capture this. The reason that's an issue is that if they have 100 stock and they sell all the way down to 40 stock, it's not going to show any difference in the offer count. And so you're not going to see that reflect any velocity reflected in that. The other issue is that offer count can be manipulated. And I have that, keep an offer count. Meaning the worry is there can be false positives. So the offer count can go down, like if a seller recalls all their inventory for whatever reason. So that's going to make them exit the listing. So offer count will go from like 10 to 9. The seller can close the listing. Like an FBM person can list something on day 1 of the sale ends, they pull their listing, now they drop, even though they didn't make any sales. The repricer can go too high, it can strand the inventory, and then the offer count goes away. I do this all the time. I send my inventory price in too high, and then it strands it, and so I never show up. You can get gated either through an inauthentic or like a section 3, and you can get kicked off the listing. The ASIN or the brand can get gated, and you'll see like the offer count go from like 30 to 4. Like those aren't sales happening. That's like them getting kicked off. But like in terms of actual positives, I think, yeah, we did go over this. Like if they enter the listing with 1 quantity or more, the offer count's going up. If they go from 1 to 0, the offer count goes down. And if the guy sells through 10, like the offer count's staying the same. But like in general, like movement's a healthy indicator, but it's not like always the end all be all. Variations. Are you guys familiar? Do you guys do shoes much in the group or not too much?
Not too
I
much.
think that
Not too much closed shoes. But we know variations though.
you guys good? Okay. I was wondering if
Yeah.
you needed okay. Raw rating count's another good way to check like that things are selling. I forget if it's on product details or offers. Basically what I found is that like I get 1 feedback for like every 50 to 100 sales. Like it's miserable. So the idea is if you see the rating count going up over time, it's an indication that like people like this item enough to leave a rating on it. And so in the context of this listing, like say if it's 1,000 days old and it has like 500 ratings, over its lifetime, you can kind of infer, let's get this sorted by highest ratings. This one has 50 bought past month, and you see the ratings count going up. So each rating of 1 increase could potentially represent 50 sales behind it. And so seeing it go up gradually is kind of at least a baseline indication that like people like this enough to leave a review and there's velocity behind it. As you go lower on the rating count, you'll notice that it gets increasingly like more stagnant and like nothing's happening. And so it's useful to know that because like you don't have to go further in the due diligence because like basically the lower you go, the less sales you expect to happen. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It translates into like instead of buying like 15 of the quantity, like you buy 3. And the expectation is if it's going to take longer to sell, you want to go shallower on your inventory. But the other thing I do is like if you're going to sell that slow, I want my ROI to be that much higher because I can't compound it any other way. So if you're going to hold my money for a long time, like I might expect like 40 or 50% out of you versus something that's selling fast, I'll want like 30% out of it. Stock history is like my favorite way to do it. So this is like my big thing. This is like my default. Data offers include historical offers. We wanted, that's like if anyone sold on eBay. I think the eBay equivalent is sold and completed offers because people are leaving like breadcrumbs of data behind for us to review, and that's for the taking. And so what I'm looking for specifically is like stair steps. I'm going to click and drag to zoom in. And what I'm inferring from this is like this guy had 24 stock, and in this time frame, he went down to 12. So this guy sold through 12 units. Like that's fantastic. Like I'm not guessing anymore. I know it's selling, and this is just one seller. And so I love to see confirmation from multiple sellers that this thing's selling. Because even this can get manipulated. Like FBM sellers can say they have 1,000 when they literally might only have 5. I don't know why you'd want to do this, but you can do quantity caps on your purchases, meaning like they can't buy more than 3 per transaction. And so the issue that this translates to is this guy in theory could have sent like 100 in and then did like 14, 13, 12 and like walked it down manually. It'd be a pain in the butt to do. I don't know why you do it, but it can be manipulated in that sense. And this is one of the reasons why I like to lean on prime sellers more because you can't say there's 14 in there unless you have 14 or more. And so these FBM people, it doesn't say prime on it, that's how I know. They can manipulate this is kind of my concern. But seeing like this velocity go through and sell through rate gives me confidence to know that it's selling. And if you overlap the purchase, like August 18th, you can kind of like match it up with what they sold it at over here by going over August 18th. And so now you have like a more informed picture. You're seeing that it's selling, and then you can kind of align it with what it was potentially selling at. Because that was the issue with those sweaters, right? Like it was listed at 170, but like if it's not selling at 170, like it doesn't do me no good. If it's selling at like 100, then like, okay, I know there's buyers at 100. Socket, yeah, that's the same thing. And so like once you do all that, and it's like how do you determine how much to buy? Basically, like the more velocity you see, the safer it is to buy more. So something that's selling 5,000 a month, like it's not scary to buy 500 of it. If it's only selling 10 a month on the shallow side, like I wouldn't buy more than 3 to 4 because like now you're butting up against like taking a month to sell through. Because the other thing you have to consider is that you're sharing all the sales with the other sellers. If there's a buy box, you're going to be rotating. So those 10 sales might be shared across 2 to say 10 sellers. And so it's going to cut you down that much more. For me, the reason I like to look at that offer count is kind of what I'm trying to establish is like if I saw someone sell through 20, I'm able to sell through 20 is the hope. And so it's not as I'm just trying to mirror what's been done before me. And if people have the data out there, like you're not guessing anymore. Like you know that like it's happening, like it's selling through. The level of the sale is going to dictate your purchase depth too, because one of the prevailing issues with OA buyers is the fact that like the concern is always, what if you buy it today and it just goes on sale the next week at a lower price? And so that's kind of dangerous. And so like in theory, Black Friday should be your absolute floor price. Like no one should be able to come underneath you at a lower price. So in terms of aggression, like if you want to go the hardest, that'd be the hardest time to lock in at a low price would be Black Friday. Because in theory, no one should come in lower than you because that's the lowest price of like the year. Same with Christmas. There's holidays throughout the year, like Labor Day. I forget where they are within the year, but like there's like 4th of July, Labor Day and stuff. Like, the intervals might be like 6 weeks before like a major holiday. So, like if you anchor or if you lock in at that price point, like no one should come in beneath you unless like another major sale comes in. And so like for Black Friday, I'm much more comfortable buying like three month supply or more because one, I'm not going to have access to this price point again in the future. And two, like no one's going to come in, like I'm going to be at the floor. If you run into anything that's discontinued or clearance, like you can't buy that again. So you don't have the luxury of like coming back. So you kind of like got to get it right the first shot. That can be really advantageous and you can make killer margins, but the problem is like you can't repeat that. And it sucks from an income perspective because that means you can't guarantee yourself any level of baseline income. And that really sucks as reseller because you're always constantly having to like go out and requalify everything from scratch as a result. That's why like the holy grail is replenishables because it guarantees you at least a baseline level of income. And that's why wholesale works well. You can I'm kind of replicating it to a degree with OA because now I have the web scraping and I can go through the sales without that pain point of like all the time that it takes. But that's like theory, right? Like that's the end game that you want to get to. You can kind of recreate it. And with Kohl's, I do that. I use the Kohl's Cash as like a functional 20% discount. And if you use that on items that don't go on sale, what ends up happening as a byproduct is that you're functionally creating a replenishable, like an on-demand coupon. And that's why the coupons are so powerful is if you do it on full price items, the coupon becomes a sale and it becomes repeatable. And it puts you in such a great position to at least guarantee like you make $1,000 a month or whatever that number is across however many SKUs. I got off track. Sorry. So like the other thing you can do is you can stock things out. Kohl's and Shop WSS will list their inventory levels. And so knowing that information, like if you can close the door behind you or pull up the ladder behind you and prevent anyone else from coming in after you, that puts you in an advantageous position because now you can control the market, assuming they don't restock the item. And so like those are big baller moves to do. And like I've done that before and it's super fun. Whenever the setup allows for it, like you want to take advantage of that. Cashback's going to influence my decisions too. I've seen Nike.com cashback go as high as 20%. I go on Reddit a lot, and there's a subreddit called Wall Street Bets. They call it themselves degenerates. And so what I'm getting at is I'm enough of a degenerate to buy things that break even to farm the 20% cash back. Because what ends up happening is if the cashback is legitimately not taxed, that 20%, like say you make 200 bucks on the cashback, to make that same $200 after tax, you might have to make, what is it, like 260 or 280 and get taxed down to 200. So like it has the benefit of like being more bang for your buck, so to speak. And I've bought things just to break even and farm the cash back or hotel points and stuff because Amazon's a fantastic engine to allow for that. Seasonality will do that too. Like Halloween costumes, like you have such a narrow window of execution. So like you have to buy big because like if you don't hit that window, like it's over. And like that's one of the problems with doing seasonality stuff is that if you miss time the window, like all the demand's gone if you show up too late. Time frame. And so for me, like this is kind of what I deal with shipping time frame in my head. Like I'm thinking it's going to take like 35 days for me to show up to market. You order the item. Like for me, I order my prep center is in Montana. So if something comes from like Florida to Montana, that can take like I like using round numbers. It might be faster. I always plan for the worst case scenario. So say it takes 7 days. If I ship out every Thursday, and so if it lands on a Friday, like I'm not going out to next Thursday. It might take 7 days to deliver back to New York, for instance, by ground, and that's a pain in the butt. Then it's got to check in, depending on how backlogged they are in logistics. And then only then you start your clock where like the first item sells and then that has to sell through. Then you have to wait another up to 2 weeks for the cash disbursement to issue. So that's why I'm so like heavy on historical averages being in my favor because I might not show up until like week 5 to 7, depending if it plays against me. Obviously, I want to show up like on week 2 or 3 if I can, but a lot of that's out of your control. And so like I'd rather, what is it? Plan for the worst, expect the best. So yeah, plan for the best. I think you guys are that same. And so like kind of where does this leave us? Like the listings have to fight against their historical averages. It's got to eat through that 30% ROI. That coupons used as a safety measure or a buffer, like the sale right now on Nike.com is a 20% off coupon. And the reason like sales are kind of cool is that your window of entry is the duration of that sale. So like if it's a 1-day sale, it's great because your competition only has 1 day to capture that price and enter in that price point. And once the sale's over, they can't compete with you anymore. And so that's like a competitive advantage in that sense. For you to take a loss, like say you buy 10 items, like the first 6 sell at a profit, those last 4 have to eat through the profit of the first 6. And so like it has to eat through that. It's got to pierce through like your cash back, and it's got to pierce through all the profit on like your overall account health. So like from a position of likelihood of losing money, like so much stuff has to go wrong as a result. Like you're in such a safe position. And in terms of like managing cash flow, like obviously you only ever want to buy items that are selling that have velocity. That way you can compound faster. I don't know that I need to get too much into the weeds of that. Basically, like you kind of want to stay on top of your inventory because it's going to disrupt your cash flow. Like you don't want dead inventory tying up your money because it's going to reduce your buying power. You're not compounding the money. The issue is opportunity cost. That money could be invested in an inventory that is turning over. And I think I have this thing impact, and I have an add-on. Like not that we want to sell at 10% ROI, but like from a theory standpoint, it's useful to illustrate this. We're assuming we get 100% sell-through rate. We invest 100% of the money, and we get 0% returns. If we're only making 10% ROI on our initial 10,000, by the 12th turn, we're at 31,000. And if we're getting cash back at 5% every time, we're going to end up with 10 grand in cash back. And that's like at 10%. Like imagine if you're compounding at 20%, like it's nuts at 20%, man. Like the higher the numbers you can press, the better. But that's why compounding is so important. And I think that's why wholesale as a business model favors like crazy velocity, but low to moderate ROI, because what the compounding does for you is just nuts. Realistically though, with FBA, I would expect probably closer to probably like 4 to 6 turns a year. Man, if you could go through it in like one a month, like 12 turns in a year, that'd be nuts. But it just like illustrate the point. Like this is why you want your money turning over constantly, because it just snowballs so aggressively, so quickly. But crap, yeah, that's kind of it. I think this was my time frame for July to August. I sorted this by, let's see if we can zoom in. I sorted this by like my worst profit. Like this was, because I get it wrong too. It's kind of what I want to illustrate. But like that was, I don't really take losses that often. And that was the worst loss I took in that time frame was $100. And then like that was the worst thing out of everything I did. But I also had like 19 grand of profit to absorb all that. So for me, like I don't care that like I'm taking a loss. Like I need to get the money out and put it back into circulation onto stuff that is performing, because it still needs to eat through that cash back that I have that I earned during the time frame and the credit card rewards. So like it's nuts, man. Like you almost can't lose if you're being really intentional with your purchasing. That's kind of it for like all the theory. The only thing I could do is like show you guys like the actual like review process if you guys want to see that. How you guys feeling?
Does anyone have a question?
Oh yeah, I didn't even check
You
for
guys got to
questions.
ask because this is the perfect time to ask. He went
Yeah,
really deep into product
I have
research.
one, you guys.
So go
Oh
ahead,
yeah,
bro.
got
Hey, so I've been trying to, I don't know, learn my way around like keep a product finder.
yeah, for sure.
And it's like I guess I put the question in for people that want to at least kind of figure out manual sourcing. And I guess the question for you would be like, what would you say for someone trying to new to that would be like inputting the BSR range? Like, you put in 30, 90, 120, 180. Like, what would you say would be, I don't know, that you've, in your experience, kind of been the sweet spot that you found the most, like the highest probability of
Um,
finding? Yeah.
for me, I was taught like for shoes, and I'm gonna bring up KPF to stay like around 50,000 sales rank or lower.
Okay.
The problem is there's merit in going like further up in sales rank, but the trade-off what happens is that there's fewer sales per month as a result. Um, I had a friend of mine that told me a really good story, and it was that he was a shoe seller and he was complaining about the sock sellers, and say like someone sold a sock for $3, but they sell like 100 and make $300 a month. And so his issue was like if his physical output could only be 100 units per month, like he doesn't have any levers left to pull to increase his output to like 200 units. So his only difference is he has to increase the profit per sale. And so his argument was he would much rather sell 10 shoes at $30 profit each and produce the same total profit of $300 on those 100 sock sales. And so what he was doing is he was going higher price, higher sales rank, but his trade-off was his profit per unit was just so much higher. And then the other benefit that he created for himself was that instead of processing 100 items per time frame, now he only has to process 10, and he'll equal the same output as a guy processing 100. They both have their merit. It's just like, how do you want to optimize for?
For sure. That definitely makes sense.
For me, what the reason I brought up KPF was in a perfect world, because that's half the battle is the dang thing selling. So they have a filter that you can put bought in the past month, and you should set the baseline to 50. And I don't think I did this. And so the reason you do 50 is because that's the lowest point right here. Because the way it works is that 50 means it sold anywhere between 50 and 99 in that time range. And 0 can be anywhere from 0 to 49. So there's sales occurring. It's just you don't know without doing the due diligence. And when you're doing it at scale, doing that much due diligence, like it sucks, man. Like I hate doing it. And so if you can have your starting point be like, you know that this item's selling, like that's cool. Like start with that. And whatever sales ranks come up as a result, like you're good. Like on
Okay.
this thing, this one's 134,000 rank, but it's still selling 50 a month. And so like if I stuck to my 50,000 filter, like I wouldn't have caught that. With the rating, the individual rating, at least with variations, like historically, this one's got 573. So like I know historically that this has had, let's say, times 50, like that's potentially like 20,000 sales that it's had in the lifetime of if it's listing. And so like you can use that as an indicator of lifetime sales. And so the lower you go down, like it's either newer or it's just not selling at all. Because the issue is like you always want to optimize your time. Like you don't want to review things that aren't selling, kind of. That was a good question. It's a great question.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, I hope it makes sense, man. I could be wrong. It's my first day.
No, the 50 was something I haven't discovered and trying to figure it out. It's like I'm totally for VAs, but I'm like a nuts and bolts guy. Like I have to teach a guy to fish, at least like say I can do it. And so I'm at least gonna try to figure it out.
I'm absolutely with you too. I did a video in the past while I'm like scratching my head. I did one on like 21 KPF filters just as a starting point. But that's kind of one of the issues with KPF stuff is that it's beneficial to run KPF because like your starting point is from a confirmed listing that exists on Amazon, which is great. Then you have to like your starting point is a known point, but then you have to go backwards and pair it up to like where it's from and like the source. But then the other issue becomes you don't know like the when or the how, meaning what the entry price was, when it was, or how they got it. And like there's no way to know it, but like at least if you can time it, it's like if you know it came from Walmart, like that's half the battle. But then they may have bought it at Black Friday, is what I'm getting at. And like there's no way to recreate that unless that window happens again. And the other thing is with the manufacturing margin, like that's why you need the site mastery because you need to know how to drive down the price as hard as you can, doing all those bells and whistles. And so like with that, I always like to frame it as like you can find the where, but like you're missing the when and the how. And so the two things you can do is you can set a price monitor on Keepa, say like tell me like you find it at $20 today, and you can set up an alert say like when it hits this $25 selling price, send me an alert because that might be enough margin to make the item valuable. Because the issue you're trying to solve is that you spent the time doing all the due diligence. You don't want to walk away from it because like it didn't work at the moment of review. You want to leave it like in the queue, so to speak. You want to have the price alerts going in the background. And the idea is you might have like 100 of them going at one time, and something's going to trigger eventually. And so the other way you can do it is you can set up what's called price monitors. I use one called distill.io. And all it does is like you would say it's like 20 bucks on the website. You would just have it look at that $20. And if it ever changes to like 15, it'll trigger. And so the trigger event is your trigger to go review it. And now what you've functionally done is that now you can make that listing work because your cost went down or the selling price went up. So you have both sides covered. And it's kind of like you're looking at them without looking at them. And so what's going to happen is something's going to trigger. the more and more you have set up, something's going to trigger. And it's about like maximizing your time. If that makes sense. But like, this is how I source. I hope what I said made a lot of sense.
Oh, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, bro. It's very like detailed and very deep, right? Because that's the 7-figure seller, right?
Yeah.
On the way of like doing product research. So, but I guess, for the new people, like, what's your advice for the new sellers? New meaning 90 days or less
Um,
to Amazon. Like how should they start? Where should they start?
um,
Thought about like complete newbies because Jill just
yeah.
started.
So
James just started. Yeah.
one of the big things I would recommend is like learning or taking advantage of everything that's available to you. And the reason I bring that up is like the landscape or the marketplace isn't fair. And it's not that like, it's basically like you're competing against people that are taking advantage of all or some of the things. And so that's why when you review stuff, a lot of the times it just doesn't look profitable. And so I think Miles or Warner, one of the YouTube guys, will say like, good products are made, they're not found. And you're making them through manufacturing that margin. They call it manufacturing margin because like you'll buy a gift card for 10% off. So like you're increasing the margin by 10%. And so you're just trying to like, that's half the battle, like figuring out how to get all the margin down. I think with Kohl's, if you get everything going the way it's supposed to be, you can get like an effective 37% discount permanently. And so what that translates to is like everyone's sourcing at 100 and you're sourcing at $63 cost. And so like you're in such a better position to buy profitable items because your cost is so much lower than everyone else. Like the first things I always to look for like discounted gift cards, especially if you do OA. For RA, like in-store stuff, I do everything UPC matching because the other issue is like you waste a lot of time. Like, does this shirt have 2 buttons and the listing has 4 buttons? Like, I do UPC matches because I'm hoping the product catalog's accurate, and it's just a numbers game. Like, the hit rate's gonna look really low on your end, and that's why I chose to automate this. And just to give you like an idea, where's the WSS? I ran WSS, and that was 28,000 UPCs. And of those 28,000, only 455 of them met the metrics that I'm trying to do. And of those 400, like I might only buy like 10 to 20 of them. So it's I don't know how to frame it because it's discouraging, but it's like I also want to drive home the point that like not everything's gonna work. And that's also why the hit rate's so low, is because not everything works.
It's a numbers game. I agree. I mean, the more products you find, right, the more you can sell.
Yeah.
And then out of those things that you sell, some are going to work, some are not.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
And
really like ultimately what it is anyway.
a lot of it is just like when you're really new, a lot of it's just like proof of concept and believing in the system. And it's going to be a lot of information overwhelm coming up to speed to learn everything. But once you pass that threshold and it becomes kind of like second nature, then it's a matter of like turning the volume up to 11. And that's one of
Yeah.
the biggest things for me was like learning how to manufacture the margin, lower my cost as low as I could go, and then like leaning into velocity because velocity is how you're going to move product. If the velocity is not there, then like it's going to take that much longer to exit the listing. And that's the other byproduct that you want is that like, you know, if for whatever reason you need to like liquidate, you want to be able to do it in like a timely fashion. Not that you'd ever want to, but like you always want to have that in the back of your mind. How long would it take?
Yeah, and I guess what's your advice for I want to say the more advanced sellers, um and they want to take their product research level to or knowledge to like a different level.
Um, I would
Like how do we
highly
go from, yeah, so
I would highly encourage you guys to network. One of the things the mistakes I made in the beginning was like being hesitant to show or share some leads with other people. But I failed to realize that like the perspective you gain from another set of eyes is worth the lifetime value of that is worth more than the sacrifice of that one ASIN for that one event. Because one of the things I found fascinating with Amazon is that you can have 2 sellers look at the same ASIN and walk away with a completely different outcome. And like to me, that's nuts. And that has to do with everyone's like risk assessment and like their aggression as a buyer or defensiveness as a buyer. And that's okay. The biggest thing you want to do when you're learning is to get a perspective from as many people that you can, take what makes sense, and incorporate it into your own like buying strategy. Because like the way I buy is gonna be different from the way Luis buys and the way Kyle buys, and that's okay. I like to joke that Amazon's kind of like golfing. Like we're all playing the same game together, but we're playing it individually. And to me, like it's fascinating that everyone gets to the same end result, which is profit, but they do it in so many different ways and it's so varied. There's so much abundance. And like you get that perspective when you do the networking. Because the other part of the networking is too, like the one things that make us distinct as humans is that like we can learn from the mistakes of others. Like we don't have to make the mistakes ourselves. And so when you lean into someone else's knowledge, like you get the benefit of your starting point being that much better. And they can tell you like, hey, when this sale runs, hit it hard, or this website's reseller friendly, or this is how you discount it. And like that saves you so much time.
I agree. And also like a lot of practice too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Execution is going to be key,
Absolutely.
right? No matter what.
Yeah. I think with my process, like I've gone through 28 million UPCs. Like whoever has the most data is going to make the most informed decision. Like that's the position, like your ultimate end goal that you want to strive for.
Yeah,
And that's why I think like Google and Facebook are such powerful companies because like they just got too much information, man. Like it's nuts.
I agree. Data, which is what we look at anyway, right? Data.
Yeah.
It's
It's
all
all just
data. We're buying
it's all
data, really. We're not buying the product, we're buying the data. So
that's what I like to do too. Because for me, like the item itself is just the vehicle to achieve profit. Like I don't care what I sell. Like if it makes money, like I'm all for it.
yeah, I agree.
The reason I like shoes is because the profit per unit is higher, like and from like $10 to $40 profit per sale. I started doing appliances, and one of the better appliances sell like $70 profit per sale. And you know, like that, I came from toys. Like I would sell toys for like $3 profit. Like that high of $70 profit per sale, like that's a hard itch to scratch. Like you don't get it anymore from like beauty and stuff. But like
Yeah.
you can turn beauty with like crazy velocity and hit the same net profit, but I like the higher profit per unit instead.
But how do you feel about the risk though of selling high ticket? Because it comes with
Um,
like a lot of risk too, right? Because
I was
what
I
if
was
they
concerned
return it? Mhm.
I was concerned about that too, but when you look at it from a math perspective, like from a percentage perspective, it's the same thing. Like the same problem is going to happen on a small scale or the big scale. The numbers are just larger. Um, I personally am of the belief that more of the newer sellers are hesitant or don't understand the higher priced items. And so what that happens as a result is you have less competition. And I think that competition is a little more not savvy, but they're aware, like don't mess up a good thing. And like all the other people that have smaller bankrolls will gravitate towards the low price items and they'll clamor over a little bit. And so the other issue is that a dollar price movement in a $10 selling price item is a 10% movement. But on a $100 item, a $1 price difference is just 1% impact on the listing. And like you can eat that dollar movement, but that could be crushing like on a $10 sale.
Makes sense. Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah. The impact to the margin is different, even though it's the same $1.
Yeah.
Um,
Because with high ticket, you have like a bigger piece of the pie, right? So
Yeah, and what happens is there's fewer sellers, but like the buy box share like kind of increases, so to speak. But like it's nuts. Like that's one of the other things with Amazon too. Like a lot of it is you're not going to believe it until you see it with your own eyes. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I want to show you like my leads list that I do for myself that I source off of is because like you don't realize how much abundance is out there unless you see it. It's one thing being told, but it's quite another when you see it live and be like, holy moly, like this exists right now and you can buy it. And like that's half the battle, man. Like it's just believing in it.
wow, I love that. That's so true. Um, does anyone
But
have a question?
yeah.
You guys gotta ask. This is the time to ask.
Well, I do just want to say that it was an absolutely phenomenal presentation, Tony.
Oh, thank you, my man.
Definitely have a level of mastery over your effort here, man. So just great presentation, great information, and I'm so grateful for you sharing your time tonight. Is there a way for us to get in keep in contact with you, man? I would love to talk with you further.
Yeah, for sure, my man.
Yeah.
I'm under Startup FBA for my social media handles. I'm in the school group, but I think I've only ever made like one post. I'm under as Thomas Cruz. I think on here I'm listed as Tony Cruz because
Yeah.
my middle name is Anthony. That's where Tony comes from.
So I'm gonna post his Instagram on the chat.
Oh
So
yeah, for sure.
if you guys wanna
Okay.
follow him, you can right there.
Um,
All right, but
it took me a really long time to get to this point. It just looks polished because I've made like a mountain of errors behind me. But yeah, this is kind of one of the calls that I wish I would have had early on because like belief is half of it, learning how to do it is the second half, and then like seeing it. Yeah, it's just crazy, man. Like I'm so stoked with Amazon. At this level, you're just like moving product around and pressing buttons, which is why I say press buttons for a living. And I used one of the VAs from Luis, and I told him like I'm gonna have a real unique situation because I have no problem finding the leads. The problem becomes vetting the leads. And so it's useful from an automation standpoint in that my starting point where I introduce the human is so much further into the process than everyone else because you have to like find it and then vet it. And like just finding it alone wastes so much time. And it hurts. It sucks.
He's doing a great job, right, bro?
Dude, that guy's phenomenal. He's such a workhorse. I love that man.
I'm not gonna fire him, bro.
No, don't do that. I love that
Kidding.
guy. Love that guy.
Yeah, Jaden is amazing.
The other thing I would tell you too in regards to the VAs, and I'm starting to learn this, and this is part of my personal growth. I know you guys probably have professional backgrounds with management and stuff, but one of the things I tell myself is that the work needs to get done. You don't need to be the one doing it. Meaning, like, the leads need to get vetted in my case, but like I don't have to be the one doing it. Jaden's the one that's doing it as a result. And that's such like a virtuous thing to be able to give someone else a job. I don't enjoy it, but like he's all about it. And like if you want to do it, my man, like that's great. And then I could do other things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's needed, especially as you scale, right? That's why I do
Yeah.
offer the service to people too, because it's just needed in the marketplace for sure.
Absolutely. And I think as a business owner, I think in general, people want to work, and that's fine. Is the problem is they don't really know how or what to do. And so as a business owner, your job is to figure out all the systems and protocols and then install the people and give them work. And they'll be like eternally grateful for you. And
Yeah.
like I was like, holy moly, like I didn't know that like that's what I was doing, you know? Like, it's so cool.
Does anyone
And
have
like
a question? You guys can like, you guys might be like one question away from like blowing up your business. So seriously, you might be stuck somewhere, or you know what I mean. So
I just want you guys to believe that it's possible, man, because it absolutely is. It feels so pie in the sky. But when you see someone that actually does it and it's not boring, like it's great. I love it.
it's always a regular guy, right?
Yeah, dude, I got like no background in this. Like I was a dispatcher at a propane company for 3 years. Like I have an associate's degree in business management and supervision. Like I'm just some guy. Um, in December of last year, I think I did 240,000 in revenue, and the account made 50,000 in profit in December alone. Like I don't know where to make that kind of money like anywhere else. Like this is it. Like I'm gonna keep doing this until I find something better. And like I'm still not doing this to its full potential either. Like I know I'm chronically lazy. Like I hate buying.
You think
And
so?
like I hate buying. And like it sounds stupid because I have everything like set up to succeed. And I don't like doing it.
I mean, it's good self awareness though, bro.
Yeah.
Hey Tony, at
Yeah.
what point, like how long have you been using VAs? At what point did you realize you're like, all right, I got to tap out, I got to tap somebody else in or bring some help on?
I think maybe 5 or 6 months. Because that's why I mentioned as part of my personal journey is like I need to learn to let go. And like I think that's a common theme. Like you always think like you're the there's a book I've been reading by Dan Martell called Buy Back Your Time. And he has something that says like, sure, like my other friend told me something that's effective like you might hire one person that does 50% of my output, we just hire two people and then you'll quit yourself. Dan Martell says something to the effect of like someone doing a task to 80% proficiency is 100% awesome because like you took that all off your plate. And like you have higher ROI tasks that you can be doing. And for me, like the story I like to tell is like the stockbroker that just like talks on the phone all the time that makes $1,000 an hour. Like it makes sense for him to hire a barber to come to him for like $100 because like he's still making that 1,000 per hour. Like he's still ahead $900. Whereas if he went to the barber, he turns off his hour of labor and he's out the $100. So he lost his 1,000 of income and he lost 100. So like it gets funky. It gets crazy when you realize how cheaply people sell their time. Like it's kind of
Yeah.
nuts.
That's gonna be like another training, bro. Time arbitrage.
Yeah, man.
So
I have other calls that I've done in the past that are like pre-recordings. If anyone wants to watch them, you're like more than welcome to. I have them unlisted though, just because I'm weird and I need to learn how to do social media. I'm a dinosaur at age 37. I'm still learning the differences on Instagram. Those youngsters, man, they do it so effortlessly.
I know. Any more questions, you guys?
But I hope I left you guys in a better spot than when you started.
Oh yeah, for sure. I also want to say too that if you're still a beginner and this went over your head, it's okay because you can circle back at this training later. Just absorb what Tony said, and I think the number one thing that you can take from this is a belief, right?
Yeah.
Like what Tony said. Like there's a lot of products out there, you know, it is out there. It just takes practice, it takes reps. And if you can get 7 figures, we can too.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to give you guys the leads too, if you guys wanted them. Like I do this every week, so like it's no loss to me. Because the other thing is too, it'd be advantageous for you guys just to do the reps. And I think that's why I liked this call as a concept because I feel like when I was learning, I was like, well, I found the item, but like, what the heck do I do with it now that I have it? And like being able to go through things makes it a lot easier because you get the practice and stuff. The component that's going to be missing though, even if you do purchase, is that you have to wait for that feedback from the sales to occur. And once you get the feedback and it's like hopefully positive, it's gonna like drive in the grooves where you're like, oh man, this stuff makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just theory and you're just like, ah, that guy's crazy.
Test buy, right?
Um,
You know, test buy, by the way.
Test buys are kind of rough because like I appreciate the sentiment. The issue is that by the time you get the data, the sale's over and you don't have access to that sale price anymore. So that's the tricky part. And so that's why it's so vital to get it right the first shot. You can kind of mimic that if you FBM like day 1 through 6 on a 7-day sale. And on day 7 is when you make your heavy purchase for OA because you have data behind you. I have a saying that says the best data is your data. And the reason for that is the only way to get it is to put your neck on the line and get actual sales. Because then you start knowing the intervals between the sales, like one a day. And then as the time frame increases, then you start knowing the return rates. And so from a shoe seller, if you know the return rate is only like 5%, you can lower your margins. And what ends up happening is other people are going to ignore it because the margin is too low. But if you have the historical return rate behind you, set in stone, like you're much like you know what's happening, and it puts you in such a good position.
Yeah. So, how much do you buy like initially per product?
For me, like ideally, the lowest I'd ever go would be about 5 for a shoe. Ideally, I should be buying closer to 10, and the reason for that is that my historical return rate for Nike is about I think Nike and Converse is 12 to 15%, which is like what's expected of for apparel. But the issue is that you don't know when that return is going to hit, meaning if you only bought 2 and the return hit on sale 1, you're going to think you have a 50% return rate. And so the other issue with that is that you need enough quantity behind you to counterbalance the return. I think I had mentioned earlier in the sale, it would take me like in the past 4 sales to cancel out 1 refund. So if I ate the refund on one purchase, I wouldn't have the ability to cancel out the refund. Like I'd just be at a loss. So that's why you want to buy like 5 to offset the refund if it hits. Because you don't know if it's going to hit on sale 1 or sale 5. And then it's going to skew the return rate. Like 1 return on 5 sales looks like 20%, but realistically, it might be 10% had you bought the 10.
Yeah, makes sense. Any more questions, you guys? Tony's busy, so we gotta let this man go.
I have date night tonight, so I'm excited today, man.
He's got a list to go through, so
Yeah.
and data to scrape.
Oh yeah. Can I send you the leads, Luis, and then like you distribute them however you want?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, cool, yeah. Just as my gift for listening to me. I know it's a lot of information, and I hope it was entertaining.
No, thanks for your time, bro. Thanks for your time, man. There's like very high level stuff, and people need to like hear it, right, and see it. So
There's a lot that goes into it, and I didn't appreciate how much nuance there is.
yeah,
I did a write-up for someone, and I went over the Discord character limit, and they were just asking for my opinion on one ASIN. I was like, well, I could do this or could do that. I'm like, this is just nuts. Like, it's just nuts. I like to joke that like I want to get it right on purpose because like I've gotten things wrong like on like you know, like I bought things on accident. Like I want to make sure I'm buying it on purpose, you know? Like it performed the way I expected it to perform.
Love it. But yeah, before Tony goes, can you please add him on Instagram at start of FBA? It's in the chat.
Oh yeah.
And
appreciate
can we
you
also
guys.
give Tony some emojis in the chat, some type of love, hugs, virtual kisses or whatever, virtual hugs.
You guys are great. I love you guys. It's a good time. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me. I super appreciate it. I was
There you go.
it took like 3 or 4 hours to put all the framework together, and so that's why it flowed the way that it did.
Yeah, thanks for your time, man. Really
Yeah, for
appreciate it,
sure.
bro.
But yeah,
Alright, guys.
I'm gonna go grab a margarita. Like, it's good times.
Alrighty.
All right,
Alright,
brother.
guys. Thanks, Tony.
Have a good one, guys.
And I'll see you guys next week.
Take care, bud.
See you guys. Bye-bye.